White ball!
This week, I caught up with 19th and 20th century Irish historian and lecturer at Teesside University, RoisIn Higgins. We discussed the close links between Irish culture and identity and the GAA. Here's what Roisín had to say.
So, RoisIn Higgins, lecturer in history at Teesside University. Thanks for speaking to us. We're going to ask you a bit of questions today about the Irish identity, culture, and with a focus on GAA especially. So, in terms of the GAA, would it be a fair statement to say that it's a community within itself?
I think so. The GAA is a unique sporting organisation. There's nothing like it anywhere else in the world, really. It was founded in 1884 in response to the popularity of British sports in Ireland and in fact across the world. It's formed at the point at which sport is becoming codified, formalised, so you get the setting up of the Football Association, the Rugby Union, and the GAA comes out of that very, very much in terms of trying deliberately to create Irish sport for Irish people.
Yeah, and it's also something that Irish people sort of cling to and call their own, even though hundreds of nationalities play it. Would that be?
Well, there are hundreds of nationalities that play it, but one of the things that's really interesting about the GAA is you play for your club and you play for your county. It's an amateur sport, so there isn't a transfer market. There's no transfer window, as you have to get a special dispensation if you want to play for a parish other than your own. And it's shocking if somebody wants to play for a county other than their own. So that it's very, very embedded in Irish culture and identity. And of course, for many Irish people, the first thing they do if they move abroad is they find the local GAA association, so that for the Irish diaspora it's a really important network of friendship, of support, of employment, and a sense of community.
Absolutely. I mean, traditionally it's a very nationalist sporting organisation. Do you feel those sort of political links to the GAA are ever really likely to change?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, it was set up by Irish nationalists. There were members of the Irish Republican Brotherhood at that first meeting in Thurles in 1884. So it's always had a very political element to it. And one of the big battles at the end of the 19th century was between the Fenians, between the IRB and the Catholic Church, who was going to take ownership over the GAA. And in many ways, Republicans and the Catholic Church have been fighting over ownership of the GAA since. And what that tells you is there's not a lot of room for people who aren't part of, who don't identify with Irish nationalism. That's particularly true in the north of Ireland. It has always been a really important cultural identifier for people who are part of the nationalist community in the north.
I mean, do you think wearing GAA jerseys could be seen as a political statement by, I suppose, people back home in Ireland? I know that in the past, unionist politicians have voiced their concern about wearing GAA gear to the likes of a university campus and can be seen as intimidating.
Well, on a lot of ferries or in lots of places, sporting colours are banned because sporting colours can be seen to aggravate other, people of a different club. And so the GAA probably falls into that, really, that it identifies people in terms of which community they're from. And certainly if you look at a university like Queen's, if you look at the campus in Queen's, it is really clear which, the students have their GAA bags and their GAA jerseys, and there's a confidence about Northern nationalism now in terms of wearing those colours. So I can see why some people feel that that's a very political thing to do.
Yeah, and I suppose what about the more blatant jerseys, like for example the 1916 Easter Rising tops that O'Neill's Sportswear released last year in the centenary year? Something like that could be, I suppose, blatantly political.
Well, of course the Easter Rising is political, but it depends on the context. Because what was really interesting during the centenary was how symbols and phrases and jerseys that traditionally in the recent past have been associated with Northern republicanism were actually reclaimed by the Southern state. And so all of the Easter lily and images of Patrick Pearse were very much part of the official commemoration, as you might expect. And similarly, that's why O'Neill's felt they could design that jersey. They didn't see it as political in the same way anymore.
Well, I suppose speaking about 1916, if we go forward just a small bit, The original Bloody Sunday, as it's known in Ireland, obviously a very dark day in Irish history. As a historian yourself, could you explain to us basically what happened that day in Croke Park, which is the home of the GAA?
Well, Bloody Sunday refers to a day in 1920 when the morning began when a squad put together by Michael Collins assassinated members of the British intelligence in Dublin. And as a response to that, the RIC went in armed to Croke Park and shot dead 14 members of the crowd and some players, including Michael Hogan, the captain of the Tipperary team. There were about 5,000 people in Croke Park that day. So it was a shocking, a horrifying moment within the GAA. History has never been forgotten within the GAA. And whenever when Ireland played England in rugby, whenever the rules were changed to allow non-GAA sports to be played in GAA grounds, and Ireland played England in the rugby, even the Irish Times said the last time the English were in Croke Park, they came with tanks and guns. So it's remembered as this pivotal moment in the history of the GAA.
Absolutely. In terms of culture, would you say that the GAA as an organisation, the GAA Games, are the most iconic advertisement for Irishness? I mean, would you say it's even more Irish than a pint of Guinness or other stereotypes that you'd notice?
It certainly is now. Guinness isn't owned by by Irish people. Yes, I think that's absolutely true. I don't care which kind of music, you two have played in Dublin. They've played all over the world. The place you want to play is Croke Park, whether that's playing as a footballer or a hurler or playing it as a musician. It seems to be, it's the home of Irish identity and Irish heritage.
I mean, it's an organisation that still is amateur. There's been talk about making it professional. Where do you see it going in terms of the future? Because it's getting bigger and bigger every year worldwide.
It is, and I think there's been a real push now to move I'm trying to think of the year, what anniversary it was. For the 100th anniversary, there was a decision so in 1984, the GAA made a commitment that there would be a GAA club in every parish in Ireland. There isn't even a school in every parish in Ireland, but there is a GAA club. And then the next phase was to make sure that there was a GAA club wherever Irish people gathered around the world. So it's a big international outlook. It's a real battle, isn't it, for the heart and soul of the GAA. It seems as if it's going to be difficult to maintain the amateur ethos within it. There's a lot of shamateurism, so that people are being paid effectively. The battle over whether or not GAA players can endorse products and advertise and those kinds of things. All of these things are encroachments on that idea of the amateur. But it will change it irrevocably if it's no longer an amateur organisation.
Yeah, and one final question for you, Roisín. Who's going to win Sam Maguire this year?
Antrim.
Thanks very much.